Perfect! Now let's go find us some science to punch!
Oh God, where should I start? Well, I can't explain, but it will take a while. And I won't tell you this is a good guitar. I won't tell you this is a bad guitar. I will not tell you to buy it. I will not tell you you shouldn't. There's probably a reason why I modded new guitars, and I bought two. But maybe it's not the gear that's weird, but me. You decide. So this is the only time you hear this guitar unmodded. Welcome to Weird Gear Reviews, where I show you gear that's a bit out of the ordinary. I don't want to tell you in those reviews what to buy or what not. I want to give you a whole experience of the gear so you can decide yourself if this gear might suit you or not. Sometimes it's also just a nice thing to sit back, grab some snacks, and nerd about some gear in general. So welcome, even if you just want to listen to some absolutely unimportant opinion about a piece of wood from a nobody on the internet. My fictional character name is Dignity, and today I will tell you something about the Kramer SM-1 H. Since they are relatively new guitars, I just want to make clear that nothing is sponsored. My channel is not monetized and I never received any messages from any company, since I'm not that interesting. So everything is unbiased and reflects my opinion and poor decision making in life. On purpose, I will not review this guitar as it comes out from the box, but rather after modding it. But we will talk everything through. Throughout the video, I will take you on a journey how I usually modify guitars. But let's start with a little story around this. Every couple of years I stop by a music store and dedicate a day to check out some guitars and see what I like in guitars and features. Sometimes it just lights a bulb to what I want to modify on mine. Not this time. I went to the shop, got upstairs onto the guitar floor, and the first thing I see is a purple guitar. No price tag, standing there in the abandoned area right next to the staircase. That's the section for all the broken and repaired guitars that got damaged in the store or on the way to the company. I take it and inspect it. One pickup, Floyd, 24 frets, not too thin of a neck profile and a generally nice look. A Kramer. I always wanted one, but there was always something that bugged me about the Kramers I've seen before. But then why is it abandoned? Oh, yeah, a headstock repair. Not a very concerning area for repair, but still. No matter how many guitars I checked in the store after that, the purple Kramer was on my mind. So well, I picked it up again and played it a lot. Well, I needed to have this. I asked for the price since there was no price tag. And well, I was a bit baffled. Actually, they wanted more than I was willing to pay for. So I went for lunch and thought about it well. I returned and bought it. 24 hours in, it was modded heavily. I played a lot with it in the next weeks, and after that played some live shows with it. What I want to tell you here is I've studied this guitar very well by now, and I have a very good opinion about the whole thing and the quality of that gear. So 2 weeks later, per chance, I found another one of those online from a different store, with a headstock repair. Jesus, this has to be fate, right? a gold one. I was pretty afraid about the color though, because photos and screens can make colors look awful. So I was hoping it wouldn't be one of this weird yellowish orange golds, but rather a pretty color. And here we are. A couple hours after the arrival of this guitar. As I'm writing the script, I already played in rehearsals and shows with it. And of course, also this one will be heavily modified in this video. And I'm already sorry about the pictures you're about to see. But let's start somewhere, shall we? Kramer itself. It'll be boring again, so make yourself comfortable. Grab some candy, popcorn or a beer and listen to something you will absolutely forget a couple minutes after hearing it. So the company was founded by Dennis... I won't pronounce that name correctly. Read it for yourself out loud. And Gary Kramer. In the late 70s, they were manufacturing aluminum-necked guitars, which doesn't only sound weird, it also is. I actually don't know where is the benefit, but somebody thought about it and thought it was a good idea, I guess. But at least the aluminum neck era only lasted till 1982. Funny enough though, they produced in the beginning more basses than guitars, when soon Kramer sold out. Well, no, really, but that's what people would say today. They threw out their beliefs of aluminum necks and introduced full wooden necks, keeping costs lower and mass-produced stuff to make guitars more appealing to traditional players. The remarkable thing in general is that they started very early to put the finest hardware. Schaller bridges and tuner, Schaller and DiMarzio pickups. They were even the first to feature Floyd Rose trams as stock on their production guitars. By 1985 they started to use Seymour Duncan pickups and managed to be the best-selling guitar brand of this and the following year. Only 5 years later, in 1991, Kramer came to an end due to financial problems. It was later sold out of bankruptcy to the Gibson Corp. But that's actually all about Kramer. There is not a lot to tell you about. It went pretty quiet about Kramer in the last decades. I mean, they were the guitars of the 80s mostly. That's when they had their prime, and usually they still don't look modern. You look at a new Kramer and you think, damn, that's 80s vibe. But I don't think they need to be that brand that must be modern. I mean, look at their daddy right now. They tried to be modern a couple times and failed miserably, not to mention some other missteps. We're here now, not in the 80s, and now let's see what you actually can get for your money from Kramer. The SM-1 H is a very simple guitar, limited edition because I don't think a lot of people are happy with only one pickup and basically no other options. And that's where we are at now. Options. This Kramer comes stock with a Floyd Rose. We'll discuss quality and specs later, but one pickup and push-pull, that's it. There's no citrus in your tequila, there's no coffee bean in your sambuca, no whipped cream on your cake, no ice in your whiskey, and no coke in your Jackie. You get a beer and you need to open the bottle yourself. That's what it is. A guitar with limited options and features. It's amazing they put even a serious parallel wiring to have some variations, but still, that's not enough options. And that's the point here. People like options, even though they don't need it. And that's where we add now, adding options. So what I'm gonna do now here is I'm gonna tape off part of the fretboard and of the body to protect it, and then I will scallop the last 5 frets, partially. Scallop frets are there so you don't have to touch the fretboard while playing and you don't come in contact with that. This will add a little bit of sustain to it and let the notes ring a bit more. Also, it's a very nice feeling to play like that in the upper frets, and it makes it for me a bit easier to play there. I do that partially and not the whole fret, because usually you don't play the lower strings up there. Also, I like how it looks on the guitars when it's only partially scalloped. I think it looks cool. Your opinion might differ here. So what I do first is I will take a couple files, different files, triangular files and round files in different sizes. The first thing that I want to do is make a cut in the middle of the fretboard, so I have it easier later to use the round files, because the cut in the fretboard later will guide my round file. I measure the exact mid of the fret, so I will do that pretty much in the center. Then with this triangular file, which is taped off so I can't scratch anything else, I will make a cut in the fretboard so I have my guidance there for later. Then I will use a couple different files, round files in different sizes to make it bigger, to go deeper and later wider. I try not to touch the fret wire and leave a bit of space there, so if I have to refret this guitar, it will be a bit easier to do so later. Always remember, you should be patient, and I do that here too. You could use a drill or anything with sandpaper attached to it to speed up the process, but I will do this completely manual with files and sandpaper, and later with abrasive fabric. Only later I will use a drill to polish the fretboard and the frets. This will make it more smooth, and you have to do that because you scratch everything pretty much with those files, so it gets a nasty look. But you have to be patient with your sandpaper and later with your abrasive fabric, and then with your polish, so you will get a very nice result. You could additionally tape off the fret wire itself, but actually I'm pretty confident about everything like that, and I did it before a couple times, and so I'm pretty sure I'm not scratching the fret wire. Even if I would scratch the fret wire, I would be able to solve that problem later. So this actually takes a lot of time, and it should take a lot of time. So there's the first thing that I add to it, which is another option. And options means optional, so you don't have to do this, and there's actually no real benefit or some must-have for people. It's more like a preference that I have or other people have. For example, Yngwie Malmsteen uses a whole scallop fretboard, which is weird to play actually, because you have to be really careful in lower frets, because you tend to bend the strings if you push a bit harder, which is, let's say, a bit annoying for me personally, but that's all about preference and options. Well, let's make some examples here. How many of you, and I'm talking to you directly now, especially rock and metal players, use their volume knob for not only muting the guitar? Which of you used the tone knob in the last 2 decades, like accordingly? Who uses a 5-way pickup selector in the 3 middle positions regularly? I know some butter people want to prove me otherwise now, but if you break it down, the amount of people who use that is slim, very slim. But people buy Les Pauls with so many options, Strats with so many options, and so on. Coil taps, coil splits, and people can't even explain what's the difference. Don't fool yourself. You wouldn't need to look it up now and Google it to tell me you know the difference. Don't smile now, I got you. I know that. The same is true for pickups. So many people nowadays play with amp sims and modeling amps where you have so many options and you literally don't need all the features on your guitar you have. Your gain headroom on all those things is so high that you can't tell me you need this or that pickup. At those gain rates, you don't need the variations because everything is compressed and distorted so hard that you hardly can tell the difference. Fishman Fluence pickups sound nice, but do you need the voicings? Or is it just a feature to have and not to use? Like most of the features you have? So why do people think the more you have, the better? Usually for Fishman Fluence, you choose one voicing and you probably stay with that. Do you really think that you get more for your money if you have more options, or do you just pay more for something that you will never use? Even this Kramer with a parallel and serial push-pull, how many of you would actually use it? Or would you even know when or how to use it? And that's the point here. Many people would choose a similar guitar with more options for the same or higher price, even though they would use only what is exactly displayed on this guitar. A bridge pickup and the Floyd Rose. Anything else can be added or cut. I get the usage of a neck pickup, I just don't do it anymore. On mostly all of my guitars, I don't even bother to install the neck pickup anymore. I just leave it dead and cut it. The Les Paul I got with 3 pickups, yeah, only 1 pickup and 1 volume knob is actually wired. Everything else is just not connected. So that is probably one reason people might not buy a guitar like this. Because with this little options, you might get more options for less money, equal or a bit more. Be true to yourself though. What features do you really use on a guitar regularly, and not because you play around and test things? According to this question, you should choose which future guitars suit you regarding features. And that's why this model is probably limited. Not many people will or would buy it because of those reasons. So for me personally, regarding features, I like a lot of stuff, and if it does not have it, I will mod it accordingly to my specifications. That's the key here, I guess, what I do. There is no need to find the perfect guitar in a store. You need to find the perfect bass guitar for you, to mod it accordingly. I don't really care about a lot of options, the less the better, which means the more room I have to modify. So here's a preference I have about guitars. I don't need a neck or middle pickup, I won't use it anyway. The Floyd Rose is nice and I like them a lot, so this is actually a key factor. 24 frets are very nice. I don't need a lot of knobs, 1 volume knob is enough. If I need more holes for switches, I drill them and then I even can decide where to put it. It needs pickup rings. I like to rest my finger there. If it does not have it, I'll just add it. Weight, well, it must not be heavy. I play a lot of live shows and I can't stand there for hours and hours with heavy guitars on my shoulder. And you see a pattern here. Usually everything can be modded. Except maybe weight relief. I even added the Floyd Rose to Kahler routing and then repainted the guitar. So almost anything is actually possible. Don't get too fixated on options, but that is my humble opinion. So let's check out the specifications of that Kramer. And let's see what Kramer has to say. So this is now from their official website and promo. The SM-1 H is an exciting new version of the SM-1 and an updated version of the original Kramer Stage Master Mach 2. It retains the neck-through, double cutaway, mahogany body, ebony fingerboard, and Floyd Rose 1000 series tremolo and R2 locking nut of the original SM-1, but has simplified electronics consisting of a single volume control with push-pull series parallel switching and a Seymour Duncan JB humbucker in the bridge. Available in Buzzsaw Gold, Shockwave Purple, and Tronia Silver. And there is not much to add here, because it doesn't have that much more. 24 frets, 12.598-inch fingerboard radius, neck-through construction, contoured heel, jumbo frets, Kramer black die-cast tuners, and that's it. So let's talk about each and every one of it. Neck-through, people claim the best construction for sustain. We can actually fight about it there, because we already have a fucking Floyd Rose, which is not the best for sustain anyway. So, yeah. Mahogany body and neck, nice wood, and it's not too heavy. Ebony fingerboard looks always nice, and to be fair, on my purple one it's pitch black, whereas the gold one has a lighter ebony with some wood grain and figuring. It still looks nice. The Floyd Rose 1000 series. It became a standard now, and I don't get why. Don't get me wrong. It's a nice tremolo system for a couple years, depends on how much you use it, but it could have been a shallow one. And I don't know about the prices they paid to put those in, but it can't be much less or more than a shallow one. Look it up, what an original Floyd Rose costs, and then look up what a shallow ones cost. And then think about that shallow manufactures the original Floyd Rose, with the same materials as theirs, sometimes even improved quality. And then look up what a Floyd Rose 1000 series costs retail price. Well, I won't tell you now what all of them cost, and I don't know why they put the 1000 there, but it probably has to do with contracts, licensing, and the name of Floyd Rose. Who wants to buy something else than the real deal, right? Still, for that price range of guitars, it's a nice Floyd Rose that works and stays in tune. Now the simplified electronics, one pickup, one volume push-pull with parallel and series switch. Very simple, but they could have cut the push-pull actually. I don't think you will ever need it. It just thins your sound. Maybe some of you have a nice use for it and always wanted to have a switch like that. But I don't. But it's very nice that they put a high quality Seymour Duncan inside there. The weird thing, it does not have the Seymour Duncan logo, and I don't know why they did that. Since something like this is a quality sign, makes reselling harder too, since you could put everything inside and you couldn't check that without disassembling. Maybe they just went for a cleaner look? Still a weird design choice if you ask me. The JB SH4 is a very nice humbucker and quite costly on the market. I really like that they went with something like that rather than a cheap option, even though I throw it out anyway in a couple of minutes here. At least for me, it has a resale value. So now we're at the point where I sand down the neck. A full description of everything and a detailed how-to you can find on my channel in the Ibanez project, where I sand down the neck. I did that step by step and piece by piece there, so I won't go into any detail here now. So the edges I tape off with isolating tape because this is more sturdy against sandpaper. The rest I will do with this masking tape, which is fine to protect the whole body and everything that I don't want to scratch from usually minor slips or something with the sandpaper. In theory, what I do here, I take off all the clear coat and then go onto the paint job, and then I want to actually leave some paint there because I think it looks cool if it's partially sanded down. The reason why I do that is because the painted necks for me are too sticky. With sanding it down and then later polishing it, it keeps it more smooth and it's more easy to glide over the neck later. Also, something that is really cool here later, and I will show you that in the end, is how that turned out, because I wasn't sure how they did the paint job, but it turns out that this is actually a 3-coat paint job. So it consists basically of sparkles, then a see-through gold finish, and later the clear coat, which actually looks cool when you sand that down. And then you basically have 3 different colors that all look very nice, very simple and plain. Glossy purple, sparkly gold, and sparkly silver. What else is to say here other than modern staples like jumbo frets, 25.5-inch scale length, and there's nothing outstanding, a simple guitar. But is that a bad thing? You tell me, because my opinion is very clear here. We know now they use some nice materials, good hardware, and don't count in the tuners though, because they don't matter since they are behind the locking nut. So now we finish all that sanding, and I show you now here how it looks up close. It's not clean yet, but you get the idea later when it's cleaned. Now I only have to remove all the tape, and then we continue to the next step, which would be putting the guitar actually together again. I filmed this video over the course of a couple days because I only did this in the evenings after work. So usually all of this will take a couple hours to perform everything in one day. I would probably assume everything like this would take you about 8 hours, maybe a bit more. I would need to check all the footage that I have and then add all the hours together to see how long it actually took me to do everything like this. So the first thing that I actually want to do is check which pickup rings I'm going to use, because the original ones are matte. I don't know why they chose this over a glossy finish of a pickup ring, because everything on this guitar is actually glossy when it comes to black. So why did they actually choose a matte pickup ring? I don't know. So that's what I do here. I choose a pickup ring that fits and that's a bit angled. Now I choose the pickup that I want to put in, because I still have one EMG FH1 laying around. This is also a bit of a foreshadowing, because I want to compare some pickups with different preamps and different setups. So I thought this might be a good time to put one of those FH1s inside the guitar. But then again, I played with this live now a lot, and I have to say this will not be permanently in this guitar, because I will swap it out at some point to a different pickup. So after putting the humbucker in its place, I wanted to install the strap buttons now. Funny enough, I thought that I would have laying around 2 of the strap lock buttons from Schaller, but I only had one, so I had to go with one chrome one. And right now, watching that footage, I actually remember that I put them there, but playing the guitar for a lot of time, it never actually came to my mind again that it has one black one and one silver one. See, those things are not very important, so I guess it will stay like that. Before we actually take care of the electronics though, we gonna install the strings and the Floyd Rose. Why do I do that in this order? I actually don't know. I don't know what was that choice there, but I apparently did it there and didn't finish the electronic job. So I have actually one dedicated video about how to set up a Floyd Rose, and also if you're interested in how to set everything up, you can watch this. Or you can check the Ibanez project again, because there I go in full detail of some things too, about setting everything up and doing stuff like that. So if you're interested in this, hop over to there after you watch this video, because I won't go into any big details, hence there's already a lot of information on my channel about this. I put on now my favorite DR strings, the 10 to 50, which I use for a lot of tunings and guitars, and I don't know why I do that, but it's preference, you know, preferences differ. I know a lot of people use different strings for different tunings, but I stopped doing that apparently, which is weird though, I know, but I usually use 2 sets of strings, sometimes 3, depends on what I'm playing, where I'm playing. But sometimes I use the same strings and the same gauges for the same and different tunings and different scale lengths and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe it's not the reviews that are weird and not the gear, but me. But well, what can I say about that? I couldn't even disagree. But let's start with the weirdest stuff now. If you had troubles watching the footage where I sand down the neck or file into the fretboard, then this is not the footage for you. So here's the thing. I want to add a preamp to the guitar, which I usually use in all of my guitars. This time, again foreshadowing, for comparison I will add an EMG PA2. This is a preamp without any frequency response shift, but rather a very plain gain boost for your pickup. As you might have noticed, this guitar only has one hole for one volume knob, and this is even recessed, so we want to add a switch. So what we need to do now is we have to drill a hole into the body basically. But here's the thing, this is not working like that here. Because usually if you have a body that has a plain top, which is straight or not too thick, you just drill a hole and then you add the preamp through there. The problem is that the top is way too thick. Hence why they recess the body in the top for the volume knob, which would mean if I would want to do the same, then I would need to route out the front of the guitar. But the problem is if I route in the top from the front of the guitar, then you will have plain wood and no color, no paint, no nothing there. So you would need to repaint this, and this is way too much. So I'm figuring out here the spot where I will put it, and I will probably put it the same way I put it in the purple one. In the purple one I put a different switch, a way bigger one, but with this one I have to follow the EMG because this has a switch already. So the only thing that I can do here is drill a hole for that, make it big enough, and then route the electronic cavity a bit wider and deeper so the switch and everything will actually fit in the back of the guitar. To do something like this, you actually need special tools. This is nothing that you should do at home with tools or without knowledge, because you can slip and destroy the guitar there, and you need to be patient again, like every time. You shouldn't do this in a rush. So after we selected the area where we want to drill for the new hole, we have to drill it actually. First of all, I use a very small drill to get through the finish. The thing is about this body, it was on the purple the same as on the gold one, and those finishes are extremely hard, which means they like to chip. This is something that you have to keep in mind, that something can chip actually. I usually use a very small drill and I drill from the back first. This will actually mean that it might chip on the outside. But if you drill from the inside to the outside, there is a higher chance that the finish will chip at those points because you're breaking through the top. So what I usually do is I take a very small drill and start drilling from the cavity. With this very small drill, I'll be very careful and not use too much pressure, so I actually drill and not push. This will minimize the chance for chipping. Also, if I drill from the cavity, I can exactly pinpoint the area where I want to have the hole. After I use the small drill, which is I think 2 millimeters, I will use a bigger drill, which would be around 3 millimeters, and this is how I get to the bigger hole. So you use very small drills and work your way up. I like to tilt the drill a couple times so the next drill has it a bit easier. This also minimizes chipping later, so you're only taking away a bit and not too much at a time. So now we got actually the size of the hole that we need to have, and now you will actually see the problem of that. The shaft of the preamp is too short for it. If you would take a very long shaft there, it might work, but the problem is that the top is way too thick actually. You would need a shaft of probably over 1 centimeter. So what we do now is we use this router and we route the electronic cavity on this exact spot deeper. So the top gets a bit thinner and we can put the preamp through the top. In the next step, I will cover the whole body with masking tape again around the area where I will route. This is just to protect the finish, so I will not damage it with the tools that I'm using. The biggest problem there is actually that you can't see, because the electronic cavity is actually very deep already. So if you have the router up top, you can't really see what's going on there. Hence, I have to tell you, please be very careful if you try to do something like this, and maybe you should practice on some older guitars that you rather might throw away anyway, or on plain wood. As you can see nothing. And that is what I see too. So I have to do this with a little bit of feeling and from now and then lift the router out of the cavity to see what I actually did there. Another problem is that the routing bit that you're using, or the routing drill, I have no idea how to call that thing. Don't pin me down on that. English is not my native language. That you basically have to max the router inside, because those drills are usually very short and are not meant to drill like 10 centimeters below the point of their own surface. But eventually we managed to do that and everything will work out fine. You know, I like to mod guitars like this and I'm not afraid to do something like this. Also, if shit happens and I make a mistake, I have to think about things to redo this mistake or to deal with that. And things like this happened before. One of the drilling bits actually got loose in the router and did a bit of damage. But it was okay. I could figure something out to make it work otherwise, and you wouldn't even see anything that is out of the ordinary. You just cannot be afraid of doing something like this. But then again, you need a bit of knowledge or practice to do something like this and be confident about it. Here and there I need to check how deep I actually have to route, because I'm not able to measure the thickness of the top actually to the cavity, because the problem is that the top is carved, so there are parts that are thicker and parts that are a bit thinner. So I have to set up the routing machine for like another 1 millimeter deeper or another 2 millimeters deeper, and not more. But at the end everything works out fine and the cavity is routed. And now we can actually install our preamp that we wanted to put there. Always keep in mind though, with the mods like this, that those cannot be reversed. So if you drill a hole that is for, let's say, a tone pod or a volume pod, and later you want to install a mini switch or something, the hole might be too big actually, and then you're having a very hard time to cover it later. So if you do modifications that are irreversible, think that through. Just think that through. If this is the spot where you want to put this, if everything fits in the electronic cavity, and if everything that you do is something that you want and not something that you will throw out and hate after 2 weeks. So make up your mind about that. But what about the quality control and build? Well, I have to step in and say that my feelings are mixed, but I still don't know who to blame or who's at fault. But let me explain this. Both of the guitars I bought are headstock repairs, because I'm a cheap bitch and thought it would be funny to have 2 with repairs. So the first one I fell in love with were at display at the store. The frets were polished, the build was nice, I couldn't see any flaws in the finish except some scratches that were due to the fact that it was on display and people were playing it. Which is fine. It will get similar or the same scratches in a couple weeks of usage anyway. So for me, quality control was absolutely lovely and there were no weird frets, dents, scratches, glue or anything like that. But the golden one actually has some minor flaws, which don't bug me, but I have to address them because I think there are quality control problems and I don't know if some of them were fixed at the music shop I bought the purple from. But let's start with the minor inconveniences that could have been fixed easily. The frets. There are no fret nibs, but they are not polished nicely on the gold one. I had to redo it. They were scratching and give you the awful feel and scratching sound. The purple one instead had nice polished frets, so it might be the first shop fixed them. I also think that the frets are glued, or it might be from the inlays, but here and there you can actually see glue webs on the fretboard of the gold one. Seems like the person who built the purple one had a better day than the one that built the gold one. Or while repairing the headstock, the first shop fixed it on the purple one. I don't want to address any shops where I bought them from to not put them into a good or a bad light, because I don't know if they had anything to do with them or if the quality control of Kramer was at fault. Something that caught my eye on the gold one was that while crowning the frets, they grinded a bit into the fingerboard binding. Here and there are little scratches and dents. It's not pretty, but it doesn't affect anything. The holes were not drilled straight for screws on both of them though, which is weird. It seems like on both they were angled towards the person who was drilling or putting screws in, especially on the pickup rings. The routing on both is fine, but still it's not really clean, and on the purple Kramer you can actually see some chips inside the tremolo cavity. Still doesn't affect anything, but other companies may get this shit done in the price range, but we'll get to that one later. The soldering jobs are fine and nicely done. What is a weird feature though is that the original pickup rings are matte. Since the hardware parts and everything else that's black is glossy, also the pickup, it doesn't really fit the style of the guitar, so I changed them to glossy ones. Your taste might differ here though. Still looked out of place for me. The 12th fret inlay of the gold Kramer is just sloppy though. It seems like it got somehow dyed a bit by the color or anything else. It seems to be a bit dirty in the inlay bed. It's not as clean as on the other ones I've seen or on my purple one. But to be fair, overall, the quality control in the gold one is way worse. There is even a hole in one fret inlay because apparently somebody forgot to fill it in with glue, I guess. As you see now or later where I sand down the neck, the gold paint job is actually a see-through gold with sparkle layer underneath, which is also predetermined for flaws in the paint job, and there are some, but they are all really minor. What really grinds my gears though is the fact that they painted over some sawdust and didn't clean the guitar from sawdust. Well, still, this is nothing you will see all the time or anybody will notice. It's more like you know it's there and it will bug you for a couple of days and then you forgot about it anyway. So overall, the quality control of the Kramer is definitely to blame for some of the flaws. But then again, should you expect more for the money you pay for? Because all the flaws I mentioned are minor. Nothing is in fact impacting the playability, the sound, the overall quality, or the purpose of this piece of wood. It's just cosmetics. No fret nibs, no twisted necks, no shitty fret job, no misplaced bridges, and so on. So for me personally, this absolutely doesn't bug me. For me, it's actually all about how it plays and how I feel playing it. One thing that I really disliked about both was the feel of the volume knob, which is weird because I had this conversation in both directions before. So it felt for me like it was a really cheap knob because it turned very easily and it tilted a bit when pushing to the sides. I personally think that a knob that has more resistance while turning feels better and gives me the impression of quality. But I also talk to people where it's the other way around, where they're annoyed if the knob needs more force to turn. It feels cheap. I don't know. Probably if I would ask 1,000 people, I would get 1,002 different answers to this question. So I will leave it absolutely out of the equation. Weird thing though, I have two guitars now from Kramer with a headstock repair, and apparently Kramer kinda follows the Gibson vibe with detaching headstocks. Because if you search for Kramers, there are a lot of them with headstock repairs while shipping, but usually not in places where it's concerning, like at the heel. So is it the quality control problem too? Well, I received one of them in an original package, and well, let's say it's not well packed, but it's not shitty packed. I get why they break, but I also have to blame the cargo people here. Kind of a 50-50 situation for me. Good for me though, I got them cheaper this way. But let's step back from the quality issues I perceived and let's continue to features that are not obvious. The neck profile and the fretboard radios play very nicely. The neck profile is a Kramer K-Slim Taper C. Whatever that means, but it feels and plays nice. It's chunkier than the usual Jackson necks, but only the right amount so you don't have the feeling you're playing a shovel. Not that I don't like shovels, I like chunky necks too. But, you know, the access of the high frets is nice and the contoured neck joint feels very comfortable. Floyd Rose height in relation to the body and neck is nice, and there are no weird other things that I have to point out here. So let's move on to the big question. What do you have to pay? What did I pay and what should you or shouldn't pay? Let's start with the price of the official Kramer website. They think the retail price should be around 1,199 euros. Funny enough, if you change it to USA, it's only $999. Maybe it has probably to do with some import stuff or something. I have no fucking idea. But let's work with that price for a minute. Is the guitar worth the 1,199 euro? I think not. I think this is way too much to ask for what you get. But then again, look at the equivalent of LTD right now. They charge for the gold one with similar specs about 1,500 euros. Excuse me? Suddenly it's cheap. ESP and LTD has risen their prices in the last years that I don't know how they actually calculate their prices. I personally don't see the value here to pay 1,500 for an 87 custom. And well, I have one at home here. But should you compare brands and their prices for guitars? Actually, I don't think so. It should always be a question about if you can afford it or if you like an instrument in particular. Even smaller brands and guitars have differences where you might prefer one over the other. Might be color, neck profiles, or just the looks. To really think that $1,200 is a fair price for the Kramer? Well, let's say you don't have to pay this anyway. New at this point, you can buy them for around $800, which is a much better price, so why bother discussing $1,200? For $800 you get a very nice guitar. Count in inflation of the last decade, then you would have paid around 639 euros for this guitar, which seems like a very fair price, doesn't it? And it is. You pay for a very nice guitar as it is for that price. There's nothing really to address why you shouldn't be considered buying it. All the quality control stuff I mentioned is minor, and we're talking about guitars under $1,000, not about quality control problems with guitars in the price range of 3,000 and above. What did I pay for those two guitars since they were headstock repairs? I paid 698 euros for the purple one, because I fell in love with it and playing it in the store. The gold one I bought actually for 545 euros, which is in my opinion a steal. Yes, they have headstock repairs, but they're not in a place where you should be concerned about anything. And if you take care of it a bit, there won't be any problem anytime. Also, they were repaired professionally and in a very nice way. I would even buy another one with a headstock repair just because it would be funny to have 3 of the same guitars with the same headstock repair laying around. But even for the price you can buy them for now, it's a great value guitar for about 800 to 900 bucks. I mean, for similar specs from LTD, you would have paid almost double. And right now, I don't find any other newer guitar that combines similar specs with one humbucker right now. So you don't have much options anyway. It's definitely a great guitar at this price point. So if this guitar is so great, why would I mod them that hard? Well, the answer is easy, because I prefer it that way. I see guitars that have a nice bass to mod, and I can imagine that I could make them good for me. I don't like sticky necks, hence I sand down the necks. Additionally, I make them look partially sanded because I think it looks cool. Doesn't mean you do, but I like it that way. I like scallop frets in the upper 5 frets. I like different pickups and electronics. I even prefer different Floyd Rose than the 1000, but they do the job and it's fine to use them for a couple years and then swap them out when they did their job. I like more polished frets for some of the modifications I have to sand, drill and route. Like if I add switches, the body is too thick, I need to route the body so I can actually fit the switches. For me, it's not a big problem to do all the things and to be determined about how I like the setup of my guitars. So I just do it blindly as always, because why should I wait with those new guitars for the guarantee to expire? I will always be this way and want guitars immediately because I want them to feel nice for me. And there's the thing about the resale value. It makes sense that the resale value drops because of mods, but why would I care? Shall I keep the guitars in a condition where I have the more market value but less value for me? I think not. If there were guitars on the market that specifically have all the specs and features that I want, I would buy it and probably would still find something that I could mod. But then again, we're not talking about guitars that cost thousands and thousands of bucks, but rather bread and butter guitars for normal people who earn normal amount of monies. Which means I don't devalue the guitar for a couple grand, but rather 100 or 200 bucks maybe. But do I want to sell them? No. I don't have any reason to do so, so why even bother? And neither should you. If you want to mod guitars to make them more pleasant for you, don't hesitate. You're doing it for you and not for any resale value later. What do I actually mod here in particular? I usually mod my guitars in the same way. I make some exceptions here though regarding the electronics. But let's start with the first thing I do with all of them. Painted necks. It's actually all about the clear coat. This does not apply to all materials used to paint necks. It's usually all the polyurethane, polyester and polymer paints. Usually this is not the case for acrylic finishes, water-based or nitro-based paints. But they get sticky. Too sticky for me. And if you sweat a lot live, then your sweat and hands start to stick even more to it. And you literally rub over the neck with your hand. The problem here is usually the clear coat. The colors underneath are usually urethane coating, which have not the same properties. Because as you can see, I leave the color coating partially intact, but I get rid of all the clear coating. The problem with the poly paints are if you start to sand them, they clog and get sticky even more. They clog your sandpapers pretty fast and get gooey a bit due to the heat. This is not the case for different coatings. Usually the color coating underneath is urethane-based coatings, which don't have those properties but are very sensitive to UV light and other external influences. So those clear coatings are actually there to protect the instrument and the color underneath. Hence why, due to the clear coat on those guitars with, for example, polyester clear coats, the color won't fade or age that fast. And that's why I partially leave the color coating visible, because you can actually sand it properly and later finish it without any troubles, and it stays slippery. To protect the open wood and color coating, I oil the necks about twice a year. Now to the pickups and electronics. Where shall I start? Well, the full reason and description of my decisions and actions you can find in the first Weird Gear reviews about the misunderstood amplifier, but I'll give you a quick insight. I play weird amps. I like weird sounds. Even normal amps I usually use very different from what other people would do with them. I usually use very low amp gain but distort the sound way sooner. In the guitar, I use preamps in my guitars to boost the guitar output signal significantly. In this case, I install a PA2 from EMG for scientific reasons. In the purple one, I've got a Jackson JE1000 clone which has been modified. And currently I'm working with a very nice guy to make myself some clones of the JE1000, and with a little bit of more customizations and changes. We'll see how that turns out. But those give me a sound that I actually like for all my amps. In this particular guitar, I wanted to put an EMG FH1, something that I wanted to try again, but I think it's a bit too muddy and dark for me after testing it live. It just doesn't work out. So usually I like to put the EMG FH2 in my guitars, and this is true for the purple one too. I think this is actually a very nice balance of low output and clarity and sharpness. I like the Jackson J50 BC too, but still, they're a bit weird and I'm actually preferring the FH2 by this point. There are the two reasons. First, you'll never get that much gain out of those as with the EMG, and the second part is that they are oversized. So depending on the guitar, you need to route a lot or not so much. For my PV, where I installed one, I didn't need to route a lot. But for this Kramer, I checked. It's a lot. And it's a hassle to do it that much. For those Kramers though, the cavity's pretty much tight, so you have a very hard time to put oversized pickups in there without routing a lot. But the EMGs fit fine and they do the job too. This video now comes a bit to an end now, since it's a very weird video, because you have mods and review in one video right now actually, because I don't want to give you a review about a guitar that is not something that I would like to have as it is out of the box, but rather modified. I will now give you a small conclusion about all of this here. So we talked about actually everything that I wanted to tell you about the guitar, except one thing: how does it actually play in life situations? And I have to tell you, it's great. It's really great. Usually I don't get that many comments about my guitars when I'm on stage, but funny enough, in this season a lot of people like screamed in the front row's Kramer and gave me a thumbs up. I don't know where this actually comes from, but it's pretty weird but kinda cool actually. In general, this guitar, I wouldn't want this out of the box and play it. It is just something that I wouldn't like to have as it is. It's actually all about the pickup and the painted neck. Otherwise, it's pretty much a perfect guitar for me, and I really like the shape of the body. So there's nothing that I can actually say bad about this guitar except some quality issues. But still, remember, we're talking about guitars under $1,000. Usually at the end of a review, you would hear a sound sample of the guitar and how it plays and how it sounds and everything. But to be fair, I'm not a big fan of this, because speaker matters and mic positions in front of the speaker definitely matter. And then again, you're probably watching this on a TV with shitty speakers or phone or with headphones, and you know, they don't represent everything and the whole thing that I want to show you about sound. So I cut that out from here actually. You will hear those guitars though in a comparison later in a different video about something else. So I want to know, you know, stuff like that nobody wants to hear. Also, they pretty much now sound exactly the same as the guitars that I usually play live and in studio. You can actually hear that in the first Weird Gear review, and they're pretty similar and basically the same setup. So yeah, if you want some sound comparisons of something, then feel free to go there. The only things that I want to show you now is some couple of videos of live events that I've been attending with those guitars, and I had my fun with those, and I think you can actually see that I had fun there.
As I flow through your life, as an ocean flying long. I am the echo of your pain.
hope that this video was some kind of help to you, and I hope I see you in the next weird gear reviews or any other video that I'll be putting out in the future. Usually I said I see you in a couple days, but I can't keep up that schedule with those big videos, and also I'm playing a lot of live right now, so I have to practice a lot for those. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in a few days or more.